Hello, beautiful people. I hope you're all having a fantastic day so far. Today, I want to talk about why we're not getting jobs or why a lot of people are not getting jobs right now. It's a very difficult market. It's interesting. There are some people I speak to who are like, actually, it's not too bad for them. They're still getting the jobs and everything else. And there are other people who are like, I just can't get something. And I kind of want to highlight some things that may be contributing towards why, you're not getting jobs. So I don't want people to feel like it's potentially just them. There are other factors as well. Okay, there are definitely other factors as well. And of course, one of the first things is that if you watch the spring budget that was announced by Rachel Reeves the other day, I think it was on Wednesday. She highlighted that the OBR's growth forecast of 2% for the UK was downgraded to 1%. 1% growth. So that's half. So whatever it was before, it's now gone to half, which means that it's difficult to get the same level of productivity or growth that we're looking for. She's talking about growth all the time, but the UK is not growing, and it's kind of like trying to understand why that is. And so some of these things will indicate some of those reasons. The second thing is because of the AI boom that started, I want to say in 2021 or two, I'm not sure, I don't remember now. This whole idea of people's jobs being sort of replaced by AI is becoming a thing. We've already seen some companies and organizations fully employ and implement agentic tools. And if you don't know what agentic means, that's essentially a tool that has generative AI and automation combined. So these are the things that are happening. I've got a brother-in-law who's doing that very thing and is actually developing his business that way. And so things that are being attacked are things like administration roles, reception roles, finance roles, anything to do with some sort of customer service. These things are naturally things that will be replaced first, but it's mainly those junior roles. And it's not comforting to hear this stuff, but it's not necessarily that these things are being replaced by agentic tools. It's the people developing these tools and the prompts and all this kind of stuff there that are doing the replacing, so to speak, before it even gets to the bot that's doing all this stuff. So that's another thing to bear in mind. So I feel it for these graduates, for these people who are jumping into the career space for the first time, because essentially, actually, it's turning into the wild, wild west. And so I'm not surprised that we're seeing a lot of Gen Zs just focusing on doing their own thing because they're not getting anything. So I might as well start my own consultancy, this and that. You got people in the millennial generation and or Gen X generation like, how are these youngsters doing these things so quickly and starting these big businesses and stuff? It's because they feel they have no choice, which is understandable. And some people aren't even in that position. So yeah, it's difficult. The third thing is sort of like hiring freezes and cost pressures. So if we think about this logically, the UK is in a position where obviously productivity is low. The forecast has gone from 2% to 1%. Therefore, that contributes to this whole mindset of things are changing. But it's not just about a mindset. If we think about the changes that are coming from the 1st of April onwards, you've got minimum wage has gone up to £12.21. You've got national insurance for employers going up from 13.8% to 15%. And you've also got these other sort of things that are just causing difficulties. Of course, we've got the tariffs that have been imposed by the USA. So again, this is all additional expenses, and therefore when it comes to making decisions in terms of hiring, it's difficult for some organizations and companies to do that because they just don't have the funds. They don't know where else it's going to happen. And of course, people are not spending as much, and therefore they're being squeezed. That's what's happening. It's the big squeeze. So it's quite interesting that benefits have changed to get Britain working again, but there's no incentivization to ensure that people actually have the jobs to do the things that they were supposed to do. Anyway, let me not even badger on that. We've heard enough about that stuff. So people are not necessarily being replaced, and people are being squeezed to do more, which is contributing to all of this different stuff. Other thing I want to say is centered around welfare reforms and work expectations. So essentially, it's basically what I've just said. So if we think about what Rachel Reeves announced, she basically is, I think she's removing the health element of the benefits that people get. And there was something about 50% less individuals who get benefits or something like that. And essentially it will freeze for new people who seek benefits. Now, of course, this is all encouraging the working person to become a workable person or a working person again. But again, if the availability of roles, if the pool of roles are not even increasing, how is that going to work? When is this whole defense stuff going to kick into play? When is this whole Great British Energy going to kick into play? How do you know the skill set for those people who are not working at the moment fits those different sort of like roles that are required to make these things work? What sort of gap analysis or skills audit or analysis has been done to ensure that? None is the answer. And maybe it's done, within the Department of Work and Pensions. There's probably some smart person who's done this, but it probably has not been translated or passed on to the government, and they're just making their political decisions. So there's all of that stuff to bear in mind. And so by simple mathematics, it's hard for you to find a job if you're within that space, especially of a lower socioeconomic background. There's also this whole skills mismatch, and you'll hear this a lot, and I've said it myself, so I'm guilty of saying this. But really and truly, the UK hasn't lined itself up for the new changes that are coming in terms of the changes to AI, tech, and everything else. And so, the new world order, so to speak, if I may say that, has meant that actually there's a skill gap in terms of technical, digital, or specialist specific roles. That's what that specifically means, and therefore that means that there is always going to be a huge gap. It's going to benefit those individuals who are quote unquote lucky enough, okay, or best suited to fill those gaps. But for everyone else, what do we do? Do we just grow apple trees or something? So there's that to bear in mind, and it kind of pushes this whole idea of a not even a meritocratic society, a technocratic society. It's pushed within that space, which is going to drive even more inequality, so to speak. And even though everyone's like, yeah, AI is good for whom? Who is it good for? That is the question. Yes, it will make things more efficient. Yes, it will make things more effective. But to what end? So, you can have a super highly productive ecosystem, okay, of a society, but to what end? And so that still hasn't been answered. The whole AI and tech thing has been, it's great for efficiencies, this and that, but what's the like, even ask your chat GPTs or Claudes or whatever it may be what the solution is, and it'll give you some maybe it's evolved, maybe that's something I check, but when I first sort of like used this stuff, it didn't really give me an encouraging answer. Okay, the next thing I'd say is that health and well-being has been a huge thing. There's been so much sickness and mental health related sort of like benefit claims, mainly pushed by COVID. COVID was a prison. I remember a friend said to me one time that, if you are confined by four walls, you're essentially in a prison, especially if you're in that space for elongated periods of time. Therefore, that's going to have a mental effect on you. I don't know if you remember 2020, 2021, 2022. All those years just merged for me, if I'm honest with you. I don't remember 2021. There's no distinct time. And so that does something to you in terms of your anxiety, your social mobility, how you respond and communicate to different people. People have changed because of the pandemic. And so with that in mind, people have long-term conditions, long COVID as an example, and they feel like they're not adequate to be in the workforce, especially if it requires people to be in work. For certain positions that are more junior by nature and or don't require certain specialisms, that those typically require you to be in person, to be there physically. And if you are a sufferer because of some of the stuff that happened with COVID, you may even get anxiety. You may not have the confidence or the self-esteem to do certain things. And, it may be seen as snowflakey, but it's a very real thing. When has COVID ever happened to anyone? The last thing that was mirrored as COVID, so to speak, was the war, okay? Whether that's the First or Second World War. And of course, that was even more sort of detrimental, okay? Of course, there wasn't a war. However, people were inside. So it's a difficult one to bear in mind. And so people don't feel like they're employable in that way. The other thing is, because this pool of roles is smaller and productivity is smaller, and because the UK has set themselves up the way it set themselves up, there's rising competition for fewer roles. So the people who are doing some of the stuff that I suggested before in terms of, talking directly to the recruiters, talking directly to the hiring managers, making sure they align their supporting statement and or CV to the strategy, speaking a language, speaking to the people beforehand, making sure that they have articulated the problem, actions, and results that have allowed them to position themselves as the right sort of person. There are people who are doing that to a laser-like focus, or even get roles that the rest of the market don't see because of the relationships that they develop with these different people. And there are people who are still within that space who are not getting these things. So it's a moving beast. It's a mosaic beast where it's, in some ways, if you are doing all the right things, which is time consuming in itself, some of it is luck, some of it, but you get more luckier the more you do these things. And some of it is just simple maths in the sense that there are no jobs available in that way. Okay. And you'll be on different ends of the spectrum. You may be like, okay, woe it's me, it's the system. Or you may be like, yeah, maybe the system, but I can still do something about it. I think both are valid, if I'm honest with you, because every single type of role and person is different. So I can't really say. I'm just doing a YouTube video here. In addition to that, the other thing I'd say is that, obviously, as you're not in employment for a while, especially for those who've been seeking for a long time, and I'm very sympathetic because even within the contracting and consulting space, you can be out of work for a long time. Some people are out of work for years at this rate. Some people for a couple of months. But if it's more than 3 to 4 months, then yes, it feels uncomfortable. And so this kind of like affects your confidence. You may feel like you're not good enough. You may feel like you didn't actually do the things that you said you do on your CV. There's all this kind of stuff there. And, the government talks about job centers and the fact that they're going to get the DWP, to the Department of Work and Pensions, to basically get an army of job supporters for job seekers to get them more employable. That's interesting. We'll see what actually happens there. We'll see what actually happens there. Because how are they going to be equipped to help every single different type of person? Okay. It's interesting because I've cottoned on that the working person that Rachel Reese is talking about is anyone within the trades, anyone who does a white collar office job, or anyone who is a simple contractor or simple consultant, but not working for a big firm. And the only reason I say that is because of some of the cues and clues that she left in her spring budget statement, and some other things that I've read as well. But they won't specifically say that. It's like they want to be elusive. Another thing I want to highlight is that there is regional inequality. That is a fact. Most of the jobs are in the UK. Look at me. Most of the jobs are in London. And there are various different types of roles that may require you to be remote and or in person. But if they're in person, there's regional inequality. Or they're in bigger cities, but they're less likely going to be in rural or more deprived areas, which means there's less infrastructure for those of a lower socioeconomic background, depending on their sort of like academic status and or their work experience status and the type of job they're doing, etc., etc. So that discrimination is a real thing. And the other thing is there's misaligned expectations, and that was due to COVID. Okay, COVID made that a thing, and those misaligned expectations may come in a form of the fact that number one, remote work. We're talking about hybrid or going to the office. Number two, I guess it's just how things operate and everything else. So the point being made is the system right now, society right now, the culture right now, the zeitgeist right now is difficult, especially in places like the UK, because of some of the policies, procedures, regulations that are set up that don't encourage the activity for businesses to create jobs. Okay, and I'm being very specific with that because this is both, when I say businesses, I really mean organizations as well. This could be both in the public sector and the private sector. Okay, if you have a leaner state, which for some may say is good, for some may say is bad, and the reasons why I believe they're doing this is so that the government can have better decision-making powers. But in doing that, it means that there's less work going around, and you would hope that a leaner state means more efficient opportunities to make decisions and make better sort of like deliverables for our people. But we're probably not going to see that. We're probably going to see a worsening of the country, not because they've got rid of certain arm's length bodies and quangos and all that stuff there, but because we haven't got our ducks in a row anyway. So it's hard to say what you can actually do, and I'm not going to be the pretend like I'm some sort of guru in this, but of course I can only go based on my own experiences. But strategically, some people, and I'm going to say some, this is not all, they're going to have to do some upskilling. Some of that's going to require people to do volunteering and or some self-learning, whether that's on the Udemys of the world or the YouTubes of the world or wherever it may be, to fully understand, actually what skills do I need to develop in this new world. It may not necessarily be for the new world. It may just be for the type of roles that you've gone for before, or the promotion up, or the promotion or the movement sideways, or whatever it may be. But you have to identify that based on what you've done so far. There's also this whole idea of stacking your career, okay? And you can stack your career with the right sort of stuff. So you have to be strategic. What specific skills do you need? What different projects could you do? And that does include volunteering. Are there different sort of like certifications and or programs that you can do that tell a richer story of you being an all-rounded person who is suitable for this type of job or role? And that's essentially what I've done, if I'm honest with you, over the years. Of course, this happened before COVID, but even before COVID, I didn't even realize I was doing the whole portfolio career thing anyway. And so this is why I always say you have to determine who you want to become, obviously in the context of the country that we're in currently right now. Of course, get help. Help comes in various ways. For those who can afford it, there's mentorship and coaching. So there's all that kind of stuff that you can pick up on. There's also free stuff that you can check out online, and you can utilize generative AI, the free version of course, to translate the transcripts of these videos and get a better understanding and a better idea of what's being said. There are obviously job centers, or there are different charities and stuff that can help these different types of individuals. So you can use the internet, online, friends, community, all that kind of stuff there to lean on these things and work out where you can get this sort of type of help. So there's that sort of stuff. The other thing I'd say is, maybe it's what you're applying for. So the industry, the vertical, the horizontal, do you go sideways? Do you go upwards? Do you have to go down before you go up again? Do you have to be in a different type of organization? I've done that many times before. I've had to do that. Or I've had to just humble myself and go two grades down before I go a grade back up again, and then I can shoot up. I've had to do that. It's a difficult decision to make, but if you have a strategy in mind, then maybe that's the best thing you can do, rather than just trying to jump it and will it into power. It's hard to will things into power in this day and age at the moment. Another thing is, maybe it's really how you present yourself. So it's how you articulate yourself. So this could come down to your CV. I've done a CV writing video, so you can watch that. Or maybe it's the interview skills. Maybe you need to practice your interview skills better. You can use AI to help you with that. Or just practice, record yourself, listen to what you're saying, and then sort of like see the different mistakes and iterations that you need to make. Maybe it's something else. Maybe it is it's more personal branding by nature. So think about what you need to do to position yourself as somebody who is employable and somebody who's worthy, because people are being a bit more picky now. Of course, again, I understand the system is difficult, X, Y, and Z, but this is for people who want to take on this advice. If you don't want to take this advice, then you can watch another video, it's fine. And then another thing you could do is think about your portfolio. Okay, so again, are there other things that you can do whilst you're looking for work? Maybe it is some sort of freelancing. Maybe you go into a marketplace such as Juno or something else. Maybe even Fiverr or Upwork or something like that, to do something like tutoring or auditing or some sort of consulting service or coaching service or mentoring service or advisory service. Something where you're helping people, okay? And there are businesses that need help. There are students who need help, who have parents who can pay, okay? There are, what else is there? There are organizations that need help. There are mid to senior level managers who need help. Obviously, you need to be helping people who are a starving market, so to speak, and have the money to pay. It doesn't have to be some high-end $10 million or pound plus individual. It can just be normal people who have problems that need solving. So maybe that's something you can do there. Okay, I'm not talking about the social medias and all that stuff there. You can use marketplaces to do this. Okay, so again, hopefully this helps and this gives you an idea of why it's difficult, but also some things that you can do to position yourself better. So let me know what some of the things that you've been trying to do in order to better position yourself to get work if you're in that situation? What some of the ideas that you have in terms of why things are difficult right now? I'd love to know your comments below. If you want to see more videos centered around portfolio careers, anything centered around consulting, contracting independently, then feel free to hit the notification bell and subscribe. And as always, my friends, understand, reach, and expand. Peace.